Rain beat down on the windshield like 1,000 fists. Jackson gripped the steering wheel tighter, knuckles pale under the dashboard light. He wasn't crying, not exactly, but his throat burned, and his breath came in short, clipped bursts. The words she said kept echoing in his head. "You're chasing shadows, Jack. You're not present. You're not real anymore." He jerked the wheel right, too hard. The car skidded across the soaked asphalt of I-5 just north of Sacramento, tires screaming in protest. For one breathless moment, everything slowed. The world outside the window turned into a blur of red brake lights, rain, and fear. Then, impact. The front of his Toyota slammed into the guardrail, shuddered, and stopped cold. Airbags exploded in his face. The engine hissed like it had been holding its breath. Jackson sat still, ears ringing, chest heaving. His phone was somewhere beneath the seat. His laptop had flown into the passenger footwell, but he didn't care, not anymore. A knock came at the driver's side window. A man with soaked hair and a construction vest was shouting something, pointing at the hood. Jackson rolled the window down halfway. "I'm fine," he muttered, voice hoarse. "I think. You're leaking something. You might want to get out." Jackson shoved the door open and stumbled into the rain. His knees buckled as he stepped onto the shoulder, a weird weightlessness settling in his limbs. Not fear exactly, not even relief. Something else, like surrender. Another car had stopped behind his. A woman wrapped in a green windbreaker climbed out and jogged over, umbrella in hand. "You okay?" she asked. Her voice cut cleanly through the downpour. Jackson nodded vaguely. "You hit hard. I saw it." She paused. "Do you need me to call someone?" "No," he said quickly, then softer. "There's no one." She studied him for a beat longer than polite. "Okay, well, just stay still. Help's on the way." He looked at her as if she might vanish, then turned his gaze to the road. A line of cars crawled past, rubbernecking. Each set of eyes was a reminder that he'd lost control, in more ways than one. 20 minutes later, after the tow truck had arrived and the woman had disappeared with a simple, "Take care, all right?" Jackson sat in the back of an ambulance, refusing treatment. A paramedic with tired eyes handed him a thermal blanket and a lukewarm bottle of water. "You're lucky," the man said, checking a clipboard. "Could have been worse." Jackson nodded absently. Then he turned and stared at the broken laptop, now resting in his lap. Its screen was cracked, frozen on the paused YouTube window he'd been listening to before the crash. A grainy image of Terence McKenna filled the screen, mouth open mid-sentence. The title of the video flickered beneath, 6 words God gave you to attract everything. For the first time in weeks, Jackson whispered aloud, to no one in particular. "Maybe it's time I listened." The motel room smelled like mildew and off-brand disinfectant. Jackson sat cross-legged on the edge of the bed, wrapped in the scratchy blanket the front desk had given him. "Just in case you're still shaking." His laptop, cracked but somehow still functional, flickered as it booted. The screen was half obscured by black lines like spiderwebs across a mirror. He reloaded the video. Terence McKenna's voice came through the speakers, raspy, deliberate, with that almost hypnotic cadence Jackson had listened to countless times in college but never truly heard. Language is not simply communication. It is magic. The universe is built on words. Jackson stared, trying to find something he missed, something he was supposed to get. 6 words. That's what the title promised. 6 words that could attract everything. He clicked forward, past the philosophical tangents, the metaphors, the psychedelic poetry. Then McKenna paused in the video, eyes half closed, almost like he was listening to something deeper than the room around him. "You must say them with intention, and you must mean them more than anything else." Then he said them. Jackson leaned forward. "I am ready to let go." That was it? He paused the video, played it again, slower, those 6 words. "I am ready to let go." It wasn't a prayer, it wasn't a demand, it was surrender, not to someone or something, but to truth, to life as it really was. Jackson leaned back against the headboard, hearing the words again, not from the screen this time, but from somewhere inside his chest. "I am ready to let go. Let go of what? Of Evelyn, maybe. Of the version of himself who thought success was supposed to feel like control. Of the shame clinging to him like humidity. He closed the laptop. Outside, a neon sign buzzed over the parking lot. Open blinked red against the cracked pavement, while a man in a hoodie smoked alone by the vending machines. It was almost 2 a.m. Jackson reached into his duffel and pulled out the notebook he hadn't used in years. He flipped past old half-songs and startup pitch ideas until he found a blank page. He wrote the words, "I am ready to let go." Then underneath, "But what comes after letting go?" He didn't know, not yet, but he'd driven himself to the edge of a guardrail, of a breakup, of burnout, and somehow hadn't gone over. That had to mean something. His phone buzzed on the nightstand. A message from his sister, Rachel. Heard about the accident. "You okay? I'm in LA for a few days. Come crash with me if you need a soft landing." Jackson stared at the screen for a long minute. Then he typed, "Might take you up on that. What's your address?" He turned off the motel light and lay in the dark, the words pulsing in his mind like a heartbeat. "I am ready to let go." Los Angeles welcomed him with the usual contradictions, sunlight pouring down like blessing, horns blaring from impatient drivers, palm trees swaying beside cracked sidewalks. Jackson hadn't been back in years. The last time he visited, he still wore suits to impress clients and used words like scaling and synergy without irony. Now he wore the same black hoodie 3 days in a row and carried everything he owned in the trunk of a rental car. Rachel's apartment sat above a small bakery in Echo Park. The smell of sourdough and espresso greeted him before she did. When she opened the door, she didn't speak. She just pulled him into a hug so tight it scraped at something raw inside him. "Come in," she said finally, stepping aside. The apartment was small but warm. Books lined the walls, plants spilled from windowsills, and vinyl played quietly from an old record player. She'd made tea. The little things he forgot people still did when they cared. They sat on the couch, neither speaking for a while. "You look tired," Rachel finally said. "I am," she nodded. "I figured something broke. I just didn't know if it was your car or your heart." He let out a dry laugh. "Both, probably." She handed him a mug, chamomile. "Talk to me." Jackson hesitated, then started at the beginning. Not with the crash, but earlier, the arguments with Evelyn. The endless need to prove himself. The sense that he was running a race no one asked him to join. He spoke in bursts, sometimes clumsy, sometimes raw, until the story emptied out of him and left only silence. Rachel listened without interrupting. When he finished, she leaned back and exhaled. "You know," she said, "when I left my last job, I didn't tell anyone for a month. I felt like if I said it out loud, I'd admit I failed. But I hadn't failed. I'd just outgrown the version of myself that thought burnout was noble." Jackson looked down into his tea. "I thought success meant building something no one could tear down. Maybe it means being someone who doesn't collapse when things fall apart." They sat in that stillness, the kind that only siblings can share, the kind that remembers your worst day and loves you anyway. Jackson pulled the notebook from his backpack and opened it. Rachel glanced at the page he'd scribbled on. "I am ready to let go," she read. "Let go of what?" "I'm still figuring that part out," he said. Rachel smiled, then got up and rummaged through a drawer. She returned with a small wooden plaque and set it on the coffee table in front of him. "You don't have to know the whole path, just the next step." Jackson stared at it, then nodded slowly. "I think my next step is getting honest." "With who?" He looked up. "With myself first." Jackson sat alone in Rachel's apartment the next morning, the sun slicing through the blinds in stripes across the hardwood floor. She had left for work hours ago, a sticky note on the fridge. "Take your time. There's leftover pasta in the fridge and coffee on the stove. Proud of you." He hadn't touched either. Instead, he sat at the kitchen table staring at his phone. Evelyn's name hovered at the top of the message thread like a ghost. They hadn't spoken since the night she walked out, keys on the counter, tears held back with that kind of strength only built through repeated heartbreak. He had blamed her back then, said she didn't understand the pressure, the dream. But deep down, even in the moment, he knew She understood. She just couldn't survive being collateral damage to someone else's ambition. Jackson finally tapped out a message. "I don't expect a response. Just wanted to say, I'm sorry. You were right. I wasn't present. And I didn't know how to let go of who I thought I had to be. Hope you're okay." He hit send before he could overthink it. Then he pushed the phone away and opened his notebook. This time he wrote a different sentence beneath the first. "I am ready to let go. I am willing to face the silence." It struck him how noisy his life had been, not just the constant movement, but the inner chatter. The pressure to post, to pitch, to be seen. He'd built a brand, but not a life. He thought of a moment from years ago, sitting with Evelyn on a bench in Joshua Tree, watching the sun melt into the sand. They hadn't spoken for almost an hour, just held hands and let the silence say everything that didn't need words. That was the last time he felt truly still. His phone buzzed, not Evelyn. A message from Kevin, his old co-founder. "Saw your LinkedIn update. Stepping back?" "You okay, man?" Jackson didn't answer right away. He didn't even know how Kevin knew he hadn't posted anything. Maybe word had just gotten around, the kind of news that spreads in tech circles like wildfire. He finally replied, "Not okay. But better than I've been in years." There was a strange peace in typing that. Honesty stripped of drama. He closed the notebook, stood, and walked to the window. Below, someone was walking their dog past the bakery, a toddler on their shoulders giggling as the leash tangled around their legs. Life went on, without him having to control it. Maybe silence wasn't emptiness. Maybe it was space, room for new things, truer things. He whispered it again, not like a mantra, but like a beginning. "I am ready to let go." The sun was beginning to set when Jackson stepped into the narrow hallway of a small community center in Silver Lake. The place smelled faintly of old carpet and lemon cleaner. A sign taped to the door read, "Mindful Recovery, Tuesdays at 6 p.m. Rachel had suggested it. "Not because you're broken," she'd said, "but because maybe you're just tired of carrying all of this alone." He wasn't sure why he'd actually come. Maybe he needed to sit in a room where no one cared about resumes or market shares. Maybe he just needed to hear someone else admit they didn't have it all figured out either. Inside, a semicircle of mismatched chairs faced a whiteboard that hadn't been erased properly in weeks. 7 people were already seated, sipping tea or just staring into the middle distance. No introductions, no forced cheer, just presence. Jackson took a seat near the end, nodded politely. The facilitator, a woman named Tasha with soft eyes and a voice like ocean wind, welcomed everyone, then simply asked, "What are we ready to release tonight?" One by one, the others spoke. A nurse overwhelmed by grief. A musician who hadn't written a song in 3 years. A teenager navigating estrangement. Their stories were different, but the feeling was the same, like they'd all been clinging to something too long, too tightly. Jackson wasn't sure when he started speaking, but when he did, it was as if the words had been waiting behind his ribs all along. "I built a life around being useful," he said, "to clients, to investors, to everyone except myself. I measured everything by what it produced, not how it felt. I forgot how to breathe without someone telling me I was doing a good job." He paused. "I didn't come here because I hit rock bottom. I came because I realized I never built a floor, just ladders that led to nowhere." Silence followed. No applause, no fixing, just nods, recognition. Tasha gently smiled. "And what are you ready to let go of?" Jackson swallowed. His voice was low. "The idea that my worth is tied to what I achieve." It felt strange to say, but lighter too. After the meeting, one of the older men, gray beard, paint-stained hands, clapped him on the shoulder. "Takes guts to say it out loud," he said. "Took me 20 years. Jackson nodded. "I'm trying to learn faster." The man laughed. "Fast learning's how you got here, isn't it?" Jackson smiled for real this time. Walking out, the LA sky had turned lavender. Traffic buzzed somewhere nearby, but in this little corner, it was quiet enough to hear footsteps and breath. He looked up. For once, he wasn't looking for a sign, just noticing the sky was enough. That night, back at Rachel's, he opened his notebook again. I am ready to let go. I am willing to face the silence. I am learning to carry only what's mine. 2 weeks later, Jackson stood on the Pacific coast just north of Malibu, where the ocean stretched wide and unapologetic. Wind tangled his hair, the scent of salt and sun mixing with something else, clarity. He wasn't here for a big symbolic act, no dramatic farewell, just space. Rachel had driven him up, handed him a brown envelope before heading back to the city. Something from the past, she said, but it doesn't have to follow you into the future. Inside, a photo of Jackson at 19, beaming at a summer program in Berkeley. Pre-success, pre-expectation. Next to it, a folded letter from their mom dated 5 years ago. He hadn't known she wrote it. Jack, you're chasing stars and I love that about you. Just promise me you'll look down sometimes and see the ground under your feet. That's where the real magic is. Not in what you build, but who you're becoming. Love always, Mum. She died 3 months after that. He hadn't cried then, not really. Too busy managing funeral details and company payrolls. But now, with the wind slicing through his jacket and waves crashing below, the tears came. Slow, clean, not from guilt, just release. Jackson folded the letter carefully and tucked it back into the envelope. He whispered the words again, each one landing with more certainty than ever before. I am ready to let go. This time, not from a place of desperation, but from knowing he didn't have to keep gripping the old shape of his life. Not to be worthy, not to be loved. He pulled out his notebook one final time, flipped to the last page. I am ready to let go. I am willing to face the silence. I am learning to carry only what's mine, and I am open to what comes next. Back in LA, he moved out of Rachel's place and into a quiet sublet near Griffith Park. He picked up freelance work, not out of panic but curiosity. He volunteered once a week at a community kitchen. He meditated. He called his father. He spoke less, listened more. He didn't post about it. The laptop still worked, barely. The Terence McKenna video still sat bookmarked in his browser, but he hadn't replayed it. He didn't need to. The 6 words had done their job. Not by attracting everything, but by helping him let go of everything that wasn't real. On a quiet evening, he stood on his porch with a cup of tea, the city humming softly below. No more rush, no more proving. His phone buzzed, a text from Evelyn. I got your message, thank you. Maybe one day we can talk, not to fix anything, just to see who we've become. Jackson smiled. Not everything broken had to be repaired. Some things just had to be released, and some rediscovered in the quiet. 3 months later, Jackson walked through a small co-working space in Highland Park, cradling a coffee and a second-hand notebook. He wasn't in a rush. He no longer operated in 5th gear. At the back table, he met with Maya, a non-profit founder he'd met during his volunteer shifts. She'd asked if he could help restructure her digital strategy. It wasn't glamorous, it wasn't 6 figures, but it mattered. Just want to reach more people who need what we offer, she said. Jackson nodded. Then we'll build from the heart out. Afterward, he lingered on the patio, eyes on the skyline. The city looked the same, but he didn't. He checked his phone. A new message from Evelyn. Had that coffee. It was good to see you, strange but good. He smiled and typed back, strange can be beautiful. Let's not rush it. He pocketed the phone and closed his eyes. The silence didn't scare him anymore. It felt like home.